It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Writers Grindline. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by my defense partner, Devin Little. Devin, how's it going? We got Red Wings hockey, regular season hockey coming up. We are days away. October 12th is the first game, and it's against the New Jersey Devils. Tough test, first game. That's not an easy team to play. But how's it going?
It is going good. Like you said, we're heading. We got one more preseason game left to watch, and then the games are going to be for real. So seems like just yesterday we were scraping the bottom of the barrel for content. Boy, we're ready to go now, aren't we?
We got plenty to talk about now, and lots of preseason games have already happened. Like you said, the last one is coming up tonight as you're watching this, against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they've already played them before in the preseason here. It's our final game, and we'll see probably a pretty close to final lineup for the Red Wings for this game. So it's going to be fun to see how the lines kind of shake out, what guys are still on the roster. We'll talk about one guy that's still there that we talked about last week as well. But before we get to that, let's get to our one good, one bad for this past week. Like I said, lots of stuff happened. What's a good and a bad from the past week here?
My one good for this week is going to be actually that I just picked up my copy of NHL 24. Super excited to play some digital hockey while I wait for this regular season to begin. And my one bad is that I just got my copy of NHL 24 because I'm sure I'm going to be upset about something about it, because there's always something that should be better than it is. And I also had to fork over more money to EA, but that's a whole other tangent we can go on a different show. But yeah, one good, one bad is going to be the exact same thing.
Yes. I used to be a lot bigger into the NHL series when it was back on PC. I was all in it with the rosters, getting all up to date before they had roster sharing and all that stuff. I would make sure they were all up to date, but a little bit less now. I used to be really big into that. But it's fun to be playing that. It hasn't been really good for a long time, in my opinion, but that's another discussion. But my good is that I don't want to go too much into this because we're going to talk about him. But Nate Danielson, he's still on the team and he's still performing. He's not falling off. He scored again past preseason game here. He looks like he's close, but like we're getting to that, so I won't expand too much. That's a good. I love seeing young players, rookies getting on the cusp of making the NHL, even though they probably won't be there for very long to start. But it's fun to see. And a bad, I don't know. It was hard to have a bad. I mean, it's just hockey's here. Hockey's around. We got stuff to talk about. There's not a lot of bad going around. I mean, I know it's a one good, one bad, so maybe I should find something. But I'm not.
Wouldn't be the first time that somebody didn't have a bad.
Can't find a bad. But yeah, it's fun to be a hockey fan right now. I hate the waiting, and it's finally getting close to being over. So let's jump right in and talk about this preseason that's happening and almost over. Let's start with what the aforementioned Nate Danielson. And like I said, he's on the cusp of making this roster. Devin, should he, is the question. Should he stay in Detroit, or is it better that he should just go back to the Dub and get his season started there rather than playing the 9 games or whatever it's going to be? We'll start with Danielson. We'll talk about the other guy in a second, but what do you think?
I think in a perfect world, Nate Danielson would be the Griffins' top line center this season. It sure seems like he's ready to be play pro hockey. Whether he's ready to be in Detroit or not, it seems like that the dub is probably a little beneath him. Maybe
Mhm.
the AHL is probably the right place for him. But as we all know, that's not an option for him this year. It's either the dub or the NHL. Um, yeah, like you said, he was your one good for a reason.
Mhm.
He's been a difference maker throughout preseason. And that's kind of the challenge that Eiserman issued in the offseason. He's brought in all those veterans. But he said, if a kid blows the door down, there'll be a spot for them. And Danielson sure seemed to listen, and he sure seems like he's trying to call Eiserman's bluff on that.
Mhm.
Um, it's going to be interesting. Should he? I think he should at least get 9 games. Um, they could maybe do what oh, I'm forgetting who it was. I want to say it was Brant Clark last year, where LA or whoever I'm thinking of had them on the roster basically up until World Juniors,
Mhm.
sent them to World Juniors, and then they went to their junior club after that. Um, Honestly, I think something like that might make sense. Let him be in Detroit, let him, train with the pros, let him play his 9 games, maybe even spend a conditioning stint down in the AHL just to like buy time. Um, and then head off to World Juniors, dominate there, and then finish out a season. I ultimately I think that the WHL is not the right place for him. I think he's proven that he's ready for a higher level of competition, but the proper level of competition isn't an option for him. So um, I'd give him more looks in Detroit and see if he can't force them to make a move.
Mhm. I have to agree. I mean, the thing is I've said this many times that Danielson could be playing in a bottom six and he'll be fine because he's such a good two-way player. That's his biggest strength that was coming out of the draft. Very good defensively. Looks to be, and that's what you need for a guy that is that young to be that developed already. And he's not just good defense in the preseason, at least. He's been good offensively as well, which you know, I don't know. It's hard to say when you get into the regular season. We'll see how he plays against New Jersey if he does make the team, and this is against probably a team that's destined probably to win the division or be in that mix. For the Metro, I mean, not the Atlantic, but it's gonna be telling to see how he plays against a team like that, rather than teams that are kind of mixed with veterans, young guys. It's kind of hard to judge. You'll see how he does when he does get into that high pressure, full out playing against the top end defensemen, playing against these big time NHLers, and see how he does. But I think should get the 9 games. I mean, he's played well enough to get that reward. And then if he looks, even if he looks really good, I'd still say you send him back after those 9 games. It's not worth burning that first year of the entry level for a season that may be okay. I mean, I still I go back to Columbus where Cole Sillinger, he played really well at the beginning of the season, and the 9 games, then they left him on the roster. He had an okay season, but then he fell off the next season. I don't know if that was because he stayed in the NHL for that full first season, but it's hard. I mean, it's difficult to say what these young guys right out of the draft, they play their rookie season. And I don't know, but I do agree that he shouldn't be in the WHL. It's tough because of this agreement, but it's how it is. And you just have to weigh the risks and the reward, I guess, to keep a guy on the roster for a whole season or send him back. But we'll have to see. All right, the other guy. Now, this guy will be playing in the AHL if he doesn't make the team, is Simon Edvinsson. And he's had a really good preseason, too. Coming off that injury, he looks fine. I mean, he's gotten a few really good, highlight reel type things. He got some great passing he's had. I mean, it looks like an NHL defenseman. That's just bottom line. He looked like that last season, too. But what about him? I mean, is he going to make the team? I mean, he should, but is there room for him to make the team is the question with all these veteran defensemen, like we've talked a lot throughout this off season here.
I like what you said there. He should. He sure looks like a NHL defenseman, right? And again, going back to Eiserman's challenge in the offseason, if young kids look like they're ready for the NHL, they'll make room for them. Well, I don't know if they're going to make room for them. I don't know. Like, here we are, and boy, do I feel like I was right when I was going
Yeah.
on my tangent about how there's no room for rookies. But whatever, I already dug that hole. I don't need to dig any further. Um, so to kind of give my answer here, Derek Lalone, when he was talking to the media today, basically said he liked what he saw out of all Red Wings defensemen, like the ones that you kind of expect to see on the roster. Edvinsson as well. You know, I think he said something along the lines of like no one really like separated themselves in terms of like good or bad. So what does that mean? It means status quo. It means that yeah, Edvinsson does look really good. But so do these seven other guys that are signed to NHL deals and have years of experience. And it's frustrating because you know, the point of a rebuild is to add your kids, not to bring in Jeff Petrie. But I digress on that one as well. I think Edvinson's ready for the NHL. I think he should be playing in the NHL. I think this is where I'm really it's just kind of silly that Edvinson's blocked out. Depth's great. You know, I understand the thinking you want him to earn a spot, but I think he earned a spot and there's no spot for him. And it's unfortunate. Do I think he'll be in Detroit fairly soon? Oh yeah. There will be an injury or, some sort of opportunity. Someone's gonna miss time somehow, some way. And he'll play, and he very well might never go back to Grand Rapids once he gets back to Detroit. Same thing that happened with Berggren last year, right? But the point is that he's still probably going to have to start the season in Grand Rapids. Now, as somebody who's going to be going to the Griffins season opener next week, very excited to watch Edvinsson play. But boy, do I feel like the people going to the Red Wings home opener should be excited to see him play because he should be playing in Detroit.
Yeah. I go back in this. I know everyone doesn't like me going back to Canucks things, but this is a really good example. Troy Stecher, way back, he had a really good preseason. Like, he should have made the team out of training camp, but had the same issue. A lot of veteran defensemen that they brought in, and he was sent down to the AHL. Probably the best defenseman in training camp. Sent down to the AHL, and everyone's up in their arms. Wow, why is he down there? He had 5 games in the AHL. There's an injury, like 5 games into the season. Called up, never went back to the AHL. He's never played an AHL game since.
Yep.
That's what I think is going to happen with Edvinsson as well. And that's what you say. But he has a great preseason, but no room. He'll go down. There will be an injury, and he'll be back up, and he'll never leave. And that's my prediction for this season. So it's unfortunate, but that's just how it's going to be. It's funny, though. Edvinsson has been paired with Jeff Petrie, I believe, and he's been looked really good with them.
It's pretty much the guy who stole a spot, right?
There's a pairing right there.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
who else goes out of the lineup? There's too many guys.
It's a good problem to have, right? Like they have too many kids that look like they're ready and other kids that look like they're really close. And then they have, a lot of good veterans. It looks like Oli Mata might be the odd man out, and he's a pretty solid defenseman. So I mean, it's a good problem to have. I'm not one to be against depth, but man, 77 should be wearing red, not black and red.
Yeah. But I mean, Grand Rapids is going to have a fun team to watch. I mean, even if Edvinsson's not there, because like you said, there's a few other defensemen that look really good in preseason as well that are going to be playing there. So, it's going to be fun either way, but it's better if Edvinsson's in the NHL where we're seeing him. But we will see what happens as the first month goes or whatever. We don't wish injury on anyone. We're not wishing injury on anyone, but it's inevitable. Injuries happen. So, Edvinsson will be up here eventually, and we'll see where it goes from there. All right, Devin, just to close off our preseason thoughts here. You have anything else you kind of want to talk about storyline wise? I mean, there's a few things that have happened throughout the preseason. It seems to be some positive things. Like we talked about the power play last week. It still looks pretty good, for the rest of preseason games here. What other things you kind of are seeing throughout this final, apart from the last game that's going to be played here?
A couple things, honestly. First thing, it's probably the biggest one. Biggest reason why a guy like Edvinsson or even Danielson might not be able to make it is because it looks like they very well might go into the season with three goaltenders. Um, they just sent Hutchinson down to Grand Rapids. Well, they released him, but then Grand Rapids signed him to a tryout. So they're basically a step away from signing Hutchinson to a AHL contract, basically. Um, and we're expecting Sebastian Cossa to be in Grand Rapids. We're expecting John Lefferman to be in Grand Rapids. If Hutchinson is there, well, then that means that Alex Lyon or James Reimer aren't going to be there. They're going to stay in Detroit. And if you're carrying three goaltenders, that means you have one less skater spot you can use. It's an interesting thing. I think that, again, we're talking about basically having depth for the sake of having depth, which is like fine, but a little unorthodox to say the least. But it's also kind of a like I understand, right? Tampa Bay needs a goalie. Vasilevsky is going to be out for a little while. You put Lyon on waivers. You got to think Tampa Bay at least thinks real hard about claiming him, right? So at some point, it's about asset protection, and I get it, but let's just say that that wouldn't have been how I handled that situation. But maybe that's why I'm not a GM. So that's really interesting. Really interesting to see how that plays out. And then the other thing I want to mention is kind of just how surprising it seems that guys like Veleno and Berggren seem like they're not as solidified in their spots as you might have thought. I've speaking about Veleno specifically, I know I've said in the show over the offseason that this season's going to be a huge one for Veleno. I think he knows it because in his preseason games, he's looked pretty good. The most recent one, he scored 2 goals and he looked pretty darn good doing it too. But then, no, it was 2 games ago they did that because in the most recent game, Danielson was skating on what is normally Veleno's line, and Veleno was skating on what would have basically been the Griffins' top line. So that to me reads as they're kind of if Danielson's going in, that means a guy like Veleno is going to be the one who comes out to make room for him. Veleno's been a part of this team now for some time now, so it's kind of surprising to think that he's kind of on thin ice. And then Berggren, he was like their rookie last year basically, and he didn't look bad at all. But it looks like he's another guy that if they need to make room for a Danielson or whoever, he's one that they might move down to Grand Rapids. He's also looked pretty good throughout the preseason. It's interesting because I say they look like they're not super solidified in their spots, but they have looked good. It's just that you have a guy like Danielson looking like a legitimate needle mover, and you've got to make room for him somehow. So it's going to be one of those guys. But it's interesting. It's clearly the roster isn't completely locked in based on contracts. But overall, it sure seems like what we kind of expected the roster to look like is going to be what the roster looks like next week.
Yeah, I mean, when we were doing our projections for lines, we did not have Nate Danielson in there.
No.
We never even talked. I mean, we talked about him obviously, but I did say that he could be sooner than later, but I didn't think it was going to be this season. I thought maybe next season. But it sure looks like he's going to be making this team and playing the 9 games. Like you said, someone's going to come out for him, and it's going to be a guy that's been on this team for a bit, and is going to be sitting out the first game. And it's going to be interesting to see how it all kind of, where the lines are. That's why I say this preseason game that's coming up tonight is going to be telling on what the lines are. That's, I think, what's going to be the first game was be pretty close to that. So watch those lines, because that's what's gonna kind of be a good telling of where that's going to be. But yeah, lots of great storylines coming out of camp and preseason, because those goaltenders too, like we said, one of them's probably going to be in the AHL. but looks like they're all going to be in the NHL to start. And I didn't anticipate both Reimer and Lyon playing really well to be to the point where like, yeah, they could be good. They could be good backups. One of them's going to have to really take the job because I don't know if they're going to carry 3 goaltenders all season because that takes away a spot on defense and forward. So, it's interesting to see how this all kind of goes. All right, off the rush. And this is a quick question. Is Nate Danielson in the opening night lineup come October 12th?
No, I hate it, but no. I think it's just easiest for them if they send them down. Just in terms of managing their roster and not having to potentially waive someone they don't want to waive and make a trade that maybe isn't there yet. It's just kind of the path of least resistance, unfortunately.
Fair. I get that. And I want to say that he will be, but just the logistics of it all and to make it easier, he's easily sent down. It's not, you tell him, don't think that, like, obviously they'll tell him, don't think of this as being, horrible. You're bad. We're sending you down. It's just how it goes. And that's unfortunately, I mean, that's the business. And sometimes, you play really well and you don't get the spot. And that's just how it is. But it's great to see him, how he's played throughout this preseason, because he's further along in his development than a lot of people probably thought. And go back to the WHL and keep developing those attributes. And then he'll have a great chance of making the lineup and making the full season lineup next season, which again is still early for me.
If he does make the team, I do think it'll be something along the lines of what I talked about earlier, where he's with the team for some time, but then he kind of ends up back in the W at some point.
Yeah. And it may not be 9 straight games. Like sometimes they kind of pull him, put him in for a couple and they're out. And then I can't remember who that happened with last season. There was someone that, their 9 games took 3 months. Like,
Yep. And then they sent him off to World Juniors, right? Like,
yeah. I think it was Brant Clark. I'm pretty sure that's who it was too. Then he dominated the OHL after that too.
It was either Clark or Shane Wright. Like it was one of the two.
It was one of them. I know. Shane Wright also played in the AHL for some time too under conditioning stint. They kind of got with that too. So I don't know if you can do that if they're not hurt. They were hurt before. All right. Well, before we get to our next comment corner question, here's a message from the Hockey Writers.
Interested in writing for the Hockey Writers? If you have experience writing about hockey, are passionate about the sport, and are looking to take your writing to the next level, the Hockey Writers could be the place for you. Here at THW, you will have the opportunity to hone your craft at one of the world's largest and most respected hockey publishers. You will have control over what you write, be able to seek out media credentials, and be supported by a large network of writers and editors. Plus, you'll get paid for doing it. If you're interested and want to know more about team openings and requirements, please visit the Write for THW page on the Hockey Writers website. A link to that page is also listed in the description.
All right, let's get to our comment corner. And Don returns again here. And this is a great question. I love it because we've talked about Sebastian Cossa a lot on this show, and he's going to come up in this question. So, Devin, predict Kossa's AHL record this season. Now, that's assuming he's in the AHL, which is what we want. So, what will be his record?
Boy, are we not ready for the conversation that happens if he ends up in Toledo again. Which very well might be a logistics thing again in its own right, but we're not talking about that right now. I'm going to assume that Cossa does play consistently in Grand Rapids. But I'm also, as we know by now, you tend to be more optimistic than I am for whatever reason. So I'll be optimistic in that he is in Grand Rapids full time, but I'm not going to be optimistic that he just sets the world on fire. I'm going to predict that he does have a little bit of a slow start, kind of in tune with what happened last season, and even the season prior. Slow start, And then at some point, he kind of gets some momentum going, figures things out, and then that's when he really kicks it into another gear. I will say he finishes with a record of like 14, 17, and 5. Would give him 36 games. That's a pretty solid work plate for his first year in the AHL. Would mean that he's more or less a 1B at that point. That's like just under half of their games. And basically reflects a slow start, but then picking it up over time. So yeah, 14, 17, and 5.
Yeah, well, now we talked about Hutchinson earlier, could be in that mix too. So some goalies are going to be in the ECHL. Unfortunately, like I said, the logistics thing, but say we're assuming Cossa is going to win that out and be there. So yeah, I'm going to be, well, this is where I'm going being more optimistic, and I'm going to put him one game above 500. So I'm going to go, I'll go around that same numbers though. So I'm going to go 16, 15, and 2. So that's 30.
33.
Math here, 33. Yeah. So a game above 500, middle ground. He'll split duties with whoever else that's going to be in Grand Rapids. There's a few other goaltenders that we talked about, Letherman, Hutchinson.
Yep.
And, yeah. So I'm going to say that. I'm just going to go one game above 500, not overly crazy. He's not going to be Askarov or those types of goaltenders in the AHL right now, but he'll be okay. He'll be fine. All right. The other question, another half of this question is who will lead Grand Rapids in points this season? Now, there's some good talent down there. So it could be tough. So who's going to lead in points?
I'm going to throw out a couple names here because I do think that, as you said, there's a lot of talent that should be on this year's team. And they all are going to be equally capable of producing under the right circumstances. I'll get this one out of the way, kind of a asterisk one here. If Simon Edvinsson plays most of the year in the AHL, A, I'll be upset, but B, I think he has a chance to really explode offensively because at that point he knows what to expect in the AHL. I could see him putting up monster numbers this year. But I don't think he'll be in Grand Rapids this whole year because I think that'd be silly. I'm going to throw out 3 forwards because typically forwards are the ones who lead your team in scoring. Austin Zarnik, really solid, kind of underrated, cleaner guy, was really solid in a depth role for the Red Wings last year and also really solid for the Griffins when he did play down there. I can see him putting up some really good numbers while playing with the other talent that is going to be on the roster. We talked about him over the last couple of weeks. Cross Hannes is going to be my second person. The only reason why he didn't post an even better numbers last year is because he got injured. He actually had a pretty good points rate going before going down. And he looks like he's taken a step this year. So I think there's a decent chance that Hannes kind of surprises some people and puts up some really good numbers. And then my last one, he was officially yesterday, when you're watching this, sent to Grand Rapids, Marco Kasper. He will be with the Griffins to at least start the season. Former 8th overall pick. You'd like to see him put up some good numbers. So I think he has a very realistic shot of being the Griffins' top line center this year because it won't be Danielson. And that means he should be playing with a lot of talent and he should have every opportunity to put up a lot of points. So Zarnik, Hannes, and Kasper would be, if you're going to place a bet on anybody, I would pick one of those 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the Cross Hannes pick because I did a spotlight on him earlier. If you want to read about his more about him, take a look at that. But yeah, I think he has a good chance of being there. I want to throw out another name, Amadeus Lombardi.
Absolutely.
I think he could potentially be another guy that could be up there in points and goals and whatever. Coming off that 100+ point season last season. So yeah, it could be a good one. Another one. Yeah, I think those are good names. I think Marco Kasper definitely will be a huge one. speaking of him, that's interesting that he didn't make the roster. But that's just the numbers. Nate Danielson may not either. And he's just there still because they just want to see more about him, and he will be sent down. He may be sent down by the time you're watching this. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought Kasper had a better shot of making the team than Danielson did. I mean, Danielson's really surprised a lot of people, me included.
Yeah. He'll probably play the last preseason games. I don't think if you're watching this before that game, you probably will be seeing Danielson playing that game. So but back to Grand Rapids, I think those are good names to be part of that discussion for sure. All right, our final off the rush, and I'm gonna go. This is a pretty quick one because we got the preseason starting here against the New Jersey Devils. Who scores the first Red Wings goal of this season?
Ooh.
Someone does.
Yeah. They get shut out. What do you mean? God, no, we're not putting that out into the world. Take it back.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna say that we're gonna see the fruits of that big trade they made right away. I'm gonna say Alex DeBrincat scores the first goal with an assist from Dylan Larkin.
Nice. Yeah, that would mean that top line is together. Or they could be on the power play. Who knows? I'm going to, and okay, I'll have two. So this is my asterisk one. If Nate Danielson makes the lineup and is in that opening, I'm having him score his first NHL goal in that game. So just so if it happens, I'm right. So we got him, and the one that I will say if Danielson is not in that lineup is I'm going to go with a lesser guy, and I'm just gonna, not lesser, but Rasmussen. I'm gonna say he has had a really good preseason. I think he scores the first goal. And yeah, I'm not going to pick an obvious one, but I mean, DeBrincat, definitely a big one that could score. It could be Lucas Raymond, could be any of the top guys as well. But I'm going to go with those two. And Danielson would be a great one though. Scoring his first. And my other off the rush is Marco Kasper. Do you see him when do you see him getting his first call up back to the NHL? He's played one NHL game, so it can be his first one, but when does he return to the NHL?
I'm gonna say November, maybe like early December. I think we're kind of expect that Edvinsson's gonna be the first call up in the moment they need a defender. I really wouldn't be surprised if Kasper's the first one they call up when they need a forward, but we also need to see, obviously just who makes the roster in general, because I also think Soderblom could be a guy who is a first call up. So, I'll say November because I'm gonna say the Red Wings stay relatively healthy, and also if they need to call someone up, it might end up being more of a guy like Soderblom who gets the first call.
Yeah. I mean, also, if it's a centerman that goes down, Kasper would be a great guy because he can play again up and down the lineup. He's good offensively, good defensively. So could definitely be that. Depends on the position that goes down, like you said, with the defenseman, forwards, who knows. But yeah, that's going to be fun just to monitor on who could be the first one coming up. I mean, it depends too. I mean, let's say who goes down. If they need a more offensive guy, then they'd probably call up someone that's more, but Kasper can do that too. So who knows? We'll see. All right. And the quick final one, and I should have asked that after because we were talking about the New Jersey game, but does Detroit win their first game?
Oh no. Oh no. You're going to make me do this, aren't you? My problem is not only that the Devils look scary this year. This game is also going to be played in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Pretty. It's their home opener.
Yeah.
So the building's going to be buzzing. The players are going to be buzzing. We're talking about a team that could very well challenge for the Stanley Cup this year. I no, I don't think the Red Wings win their first game. I think that they'll give the Lightning hell in their second game, their home
Yeah.
opener. But their first game against the Devils, not no.
It's tough. I'm gonna say no too. This is where my optimism kind of goes. Realistic.
There is a limit. There is
There's
a limit
to the optimism. But it's gonna be close. It's not gonna be a blowout. I think it's gonna be like I want to say overtime because it'll be fun.
Sure.
Overtime. Also, our resident photographer, we're gonna get new Red Wings photos right away. First game of the season. You don't have to wait.
Absolutely.
So our resident photographer, Jess Starr, if you want, follow the Hockey Writers, you've seen her name under all the most captions for Red Wings photos. And Amy Irvin's our other one, our other photographer, also amazing. But it's great to get it right. Our first game, we're going to see a bunch of new photos on the website for the Red Wings. So to stay tuned for that, if you love photos, that is, of hockey players. And I'm sure a lot of people do because it's really fun with some of the shots that she gets. So stay tuned for that. And thanks, Devin, for the show again, talking Red Wings. We had another fun time. Make sure you're checking all the Red Wings coverage over at the Hockey Writers. We're going to have a whole bunch of stuff throughout the season. We've already got all the preview stuff. We got takeaways after the game. So take a look at that. Lots of stuff in the pipeline. I'm going to keep doing the prospect spotlights throughout the season as well, to kind of keep track of some of the prospects. I know, Devin, you've got the Grand Rapids coverage throughout as well. We're going to have a prospect report, lots of stuff. So keep up with that. Also, the Substack, make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. Lots of great stuff 3 days a week coming to your inbox. And keep those comments coming in the comment section below. We'll keep our comment corner going as well. And until next time, we'll see you on another episode of the Hockey Writers Grind Line.